Welcome to another episode of Untying Knots. I'm your co-host, Lyndon.
And I'm Angelica.
And we are excited to get back into our cartel activity today.
Yes.
Look, the internet keeps going crazy. You got the internet abuzz right now with this story. And people don't know this. The story's been out for what, 3-4 years now?
3 years. 3.5.
Yeah.
3.5 years.
And a lot of the sentiment that we get in the comments and messages is, you guys need to be careful talking about this. How do you feel about that? Do we need to be careful? Are you worried about your safety?
Not at all. It's been 3 years.
Because I think people think that because you're talking about cartel activity or your experience being involved in it as an unknowing wife, is that people are going to be sent to your house and unalive you.
I don't know for what.
I said this before. I'm more worried about the guys in your DMs.
Right.
You know what I mean? Oh, man. So, man, this episode, we're going to get into more of the information that you guys want to know and been asking us on the internet about the cartel experience, about Angelica's high-profile divorce and the storylines therein. So let's get right into it. So, Angelica, one of the biggest questions that comes up is, how do you not know? Like, how the F do you not know? And people in the comments say to us, like, girl, I figure out my guy is cheating off a Facebook investigation. How do you not know? So, like, kind of, I think people need to understand from your perspective and more in depth about, like, how, like, your emotions were working at that time and what you were feeling towards your ex-husband, and kind of like some of the uncharacteristic things that he was requiring or controlling to keep you out of sight. And lastly, about how through your employer's vesting process, how that slipped through the cracks. So I think let's walk people down that aisle again so they really understand your circumstance.
Yeah. So the first thing is, when you hear the word cartel, everybody thinks they're moving drugs.
Of course.
That's not how it is. Not everybody that works with the cartel is moving drugs. Like, let's be honest here. Not those are mules. They're moving drugs across borders, right?
Mm-hmm.
There's also lawyers, there's doctors, there's realtors, there's accountants, there's everything. Now, these people are they're not moving drugs. They're not in that process. So I'm going to explain it to you guys just like Jay Flores has explained it before. For those of you that don't know who Jay Flores is, he was number 3 in the Sinaloa cartel.
And who's the Sinaloa cartel?
Sinaloa cartel is the biggest cartel in the world.
That was El Chapo's cartel.
El Chapo's cartel.
Okay.
So, and everybody knows that Jay Flores was involved in the Sinaloa cartel. So the way that Jay explains it is, and I'm just going to explain it from the expert's mouth, right?
Mm-hmm. Please.
He says, imagine you're building a house, okay? You have electricians, you have roofers, you have tile people, you have bathroom people, you have lighting people. Everybody has a specific job. Not everybody is moving drugs. There's submarine drivers. There's construction workers. There's accountants. There's lawyers. There's even nannies. So not everybody is moving drugs. Like, everything that people watch on Netflix is not true. But everybody automatically thinks, oh, how did she not see the kilos of drugs or the money on the wall? That was not the case in my marriage. That was not the case.
Yeah, I think there's a misperception of organized crime.
Yeah, people don't realize that.
Like,
it's just
they hear cartel and they think like either you're with Pablo Escobar or you're with a mule that's pushing drugs on the streets in the trenches, shooting people, right?
Right.
And they don't really see it like they perceive the mafia, which is an organized crime structure. Because the mafia is a similar thing. It's organized crime. There's people that have roles, doing their parts. They're involved in hospitality, casinos, real estate, crime, drugs,
yeah, it's the same thing. It's the same thing. Only that cartel is considered different than organized crime because of the levels.
Okay.
There's different levels, right? So I don't know. Listen, people watch too much Netflix. So shout out to Netflix. You're doing a good job. Or even the simple fact that people say cartel, they run.
Yeah.
You know, they're like, oh my God, I'm going to get killed because I mentioned the word cartel.
Yeah.
But the cartel's doing a great job because that's what they want you to fear it to the point where you can't even say the word cartel.
Yeah.
So
So let's kind of walk through, like, let's go back to your dating experience, because you said you and your ex-husband at the time were dating for 4 months prior to him proposing to you,
3
right?
months. He proposed on the
On the
4th
fourth
month.
month.
Yeah,
And you guys were abstinent during
we
that
were.
time.
Yeah.
So the sexual connection wasn't even a part of the
No,
relationship at that moment.
not at all. Because I wanted to get to know him.
Yeah.
And I had told him I was looking for marriage and I was looking to be a wife and have kids.
Mm-hmm.
Those were my intentionalities.
Mm-hmm.
hmm
Was there anything unusual or unsuspecting in your dating life back then?
Not really. I mean, we were doing the texting. We were going out on weekly dates. I mean, there was, he was living in an apartment in Midtown. I was
Mhm.
living in my house in Richmond.
Mm-hmm.
There was nothing abnormal. He had a job. He had a 9 to 5, drove a nice car, dressed nice. I was obviously working for the feds,
Yeah.
had my own house, had my own car.
And you were already working for the feds at that point.
Yeah.
It wasn't like you were dating him and then you got hired onto
No,
an
I was already
agency.
working for the feds. He knew this.
Yeah.
He knew this off the bat. I'm very honest with people what I do for a living.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew.
And do you think that in him knowing, once again, this is like an internet question, it's like that was a strategic move on his part?
No, because there was nothing that I knew or I was working on that can help him.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to say this to say this. He was working in the financial aspects. What that means is he was not working in the logistics of the actual cocaine.
Mm.
So I feel like I have to say that again.
Yeah.
He was working in the business side. So he was selling and buying real estate. He was buying buildings for Cartel.
Yeah.
So who do you think is buying buildings here in Houston? Obviously, Cartel members that have lots and lots, millions of dollars, because that's how much these buildings cost.
Yeah.
So it's not like he was going to, El Paso or something and moving drugs across the border. Now, his father was doing that when he was a child, but that's not what he was doing.
So he comes from a family.
He comes from a family where they were doing that.
Yeah.
Because I explain in the book and I explain in a prior podcast episode where his uncle was killed, murdered, dismembered, and decapitated, and he was moving $1 million worth of cocaine from Texas to Boston. So yeah, at some point the family was moving drugs.
Mm-hmm.
There was lots of drugs and lots of money, but that's when he was a child, not when he was with me or dating me or married to me.
Which I
that
think
wasn't the thing.
And that's a very valid point in, like, right, in dating and getting married, right? And we both had this experience in our divorces, right? Is looking at the family that somebody comes from and how important that is to your compatibility, the type of partner you're getting, how you'll handle issues. So, like, what challenges did you have in your marriage as it related to the family that he came from and the person he became?
Well, he came from a divorced family, obviously. His dad wasn't even living in this country. So that was a red flag. But I didn't see, I wasn't thinking, oh, his dad's part of the cartel. Wasn't thinking that. His dad was living out of the country. For our 10 years that we were married, the dad lived in a different country. He wasn't living here in the United States.
Which isn't unusual.
It's not unusual.
Honestly.
His father was quote unquote retired.
Yeah.
But his dad is older, so okay. But he was living in a different country and he was coming back to the US every 3 months. So, because you have to come back to the US to retain your citizenship.
Of course.
So, but I didn't think it was a problem. He said, after the divorce, his father moved because he really liked being in Central America.
I mean, Americans do that the opposite way.
Right.
They move to another country and come back every few months for visa and citizenship.
Right. And it wasn't, it wasn't a thing. So I didn't really question that. But like I said, I didn't think it was an issue. Now, he never spoke of his childhood.
Yeah.
Ever. He never spoke of the dynamic between his mother and his mom, his mother and his father. He just said they don't get along. They're divorced. That was it. The red flag started coming when I started realizing that there had been a lot of murder in his family. Both the uncle was murdered and then the other aunt's husband was also murdered. So both of them were murdered.
Mm.
So that's kind of when the red flags started to pop up. Like, why is there so much murder in this family?
That's interesting because, going back to, like, compatibility based on the families you come from. I know with me and my ex-wife that we came from two different family types. Like, I'm like you, I come from a family where both parents are still married to this day, 40 plus years. Whereas she came from a home where her parents were divorced. Her mom didn't remarry. Her dad went on to have two more marriages afterwards. And so I think with her coming from a broken home where she didn't always feel so loved by her parents, where there was like abuse and dysfunction, that had its impact on us. And when we had our challenges in our marriage, my thing was, okay, we're going through a really hard time. Shit's really bad. I get it, but we can push through it because I saw my parents go through some really bad times and they pushed through it. But
so you
she
tend
saw
to
the opposite.
Yeah, you tend to take more shit.
Yeah. And you don't realize it, but subconsciously you're taking those toxicities and those blessings, whatever they are, from your family into your marriage unknowingly.
Right.
And then you get in this relationship and you just start spilling the good and the bad out.
Yeah.
And you hope you have a partner where you could sort the mess from the good and make it work.
For sure. Yeah. And the other thing that was kind of a red flag-ish was he never wanted to talk about his childhood.
Yeah, you mentioned that before.
And I respected it. I said, all right, cool. We don't have to talk about our childhood. Or he never wanted to talk about ex-relationships, past relationships, because he was with a girl for a very long time. I think from like sophomore year to like sophomore year in college. So it was a long time that they were dating.
And that's valid because now in the dating scene, if somebody's always talking about their ex, you feel like that's a red flag. You would rather somebody not talk about their ex than to keep bringing them up.
Yes. And one thing that I did capture was that he was a relationship type of guy.
Okay.
He liked being in relationships based on the long-term relationship he had been with his prior girlfriend.
Yeah.
He had been together, high school sweethearts, that type of thing. But I didn't, in the beginning, you date. Now, he wasn't the guy I typically go for. He was very opposite of what I go for. And he was Hispanic. So he's like the last Hispanic guy I ever dated. Literally.
That's true.
So, but he was different. He was quieter. He was very chill. Our energies were very different. I'm very social. I'm very, outspoken. He's very chill, very reserved. So there was a good balance there.
Yeah.
So
one of the things that the internet comes back about all the time with your story is like how you took the kids away from their father, right? And how you like didn't do a good thing and how you chose your career over your family.
Yeah.
And I don't think people understand like generational curses, like kids born to a certain context is not good for them. You know what I mean? 'Cause certain things are just going to get passed down. The other thing is that, like after he expressed his secret to you, how that would have impacted your marriage with him. Like what type of marriage would you guys have had after that point?
Right.
Would have been healthy? Would have been loving, fulfilling?
Right.
Or would have been toxic as fuck?
Right.
And then you're staying in that environment.
Yeah. So I think a lot of people like to judge, right? But if you're placed in a situation, things are different. So one thing that I guess people don't understand is he lied. He lied for 10 years. So anybody that's in any type of relationship, whether it's being me, I married into the cartel, or he lied about something else, there's no way that you would be able to get through that without some serious therapy and counseling. Because lying for 10 years is a long time. It's an entire lifetime. I mean, it's a decade.
And that's not like a simple lie. That's not like the type of lie like, hey, I was sleeping with the barista at Starbucks.
That would have been, listen, I would have taken that any day. That doesn't really impact
your life in the same capacity that this lie, impacted yours.
Right. By no means. But what people don't understand is I gave an oath to the government.
Right.
Which means you put your hand on top of a Bible and you give an oath saying that you are going to stand for what this means. So obviously, if I knew he was cartel, I wouldn't have married him. I would have been like, you know what? Cool, thanks for the date, but this isn't for me because of that.
Let's run with that hypothetical for a second. Let's say he does tell you during dating. He lets it be known. Do you still report that to your employer?
No.
Why not?
Because I went on a date with him and I'm not choosing to stay with him.
Because a lot of the comments online are referring to you as a snitch and saying that you snitched on him, you told on him, X, Y, and Z. So like, if he told you during dating, would you have quote unquote snitched?
No, because it was a date. But I feel, people are ignorant. So you guys are ignorant. But, and I say that because he told me, which means he was aware that I had to report it. Whenever he told me, he knew that I was going to report this. Because I let him know during the conversation, I said, you realize that if you continue talking, I'm still going to report it. And he continued talking. So I made him aware that you realize anything that you're saying, I have to report. Not because of him, because of me.
So why not report it during dating if he would have disclosed it?
No, you're saying like the first date?
I mean, like, let's say it was 2 months into dating.
No, because at that point I had the choice to leave.
Yeah.
When he told me I was married to the guy.
Yeah.
We were in a conjoined contractual agreement with the state. That's different. When you're dating, I can be like, cool, let's just end it right here. You go your way, I go my way.
Yeah.
Because it has no effect. Now, if you married the guy and he was cleared by the government and you made children with the guy, that's on a whole different level.
Agreed.
And it wasn't me who dropped the ball. I didn't do the background on him. Everybody out there saying, oh, she didn't do the background. We don't do backgrounds. We're not even allowed to look up our own backgrounds. It's the government does the background.
Right.
But again, and I'm gonna say this again, he had a legitimate business. How was I gonna know about the money that was going in and out of the business, a legitimate business? First of all, I had no access to his business accounts. Why would I need access to his business accounts?
Oh, why would he give it to you?
Right.
I wouldn't give a girl I'm dating access to my businesses.
Right, to his business
account. I wouldn't show her
accounts.
any of my financials. I wouldn't show her
Right.
P&L. I wouldn't show her anything.
But even then, he wasn't even looking at we both had businesses. He wasn't going through my business accounts. He wasn't going through the money that was coming in and out of my accounts.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't even have access to his business accounts. I never asked for it because I never needed it. It was his business.
Understood.
Right. So, and even if I did have access to those business accounts, I'm not a forensic accounting investigator. I wouldn't even know what to look for in those accounts. That's not what I do. I'm an interrogator. That's another thing that people are like, how do you not know? It wasn't like there was Brinks trucks rolling up to the house with thousands and thousands and thousands of stacks. Like, that's not how it was. And I think a lot of people think that there was drugs and money. There was no drugs and there was no money. He was not transporting drugs. And I keep saying that over and over again. And people are like, oh my God. Like,
I think they want you to be married to a mule or married to El Chapo.
Right. Like, it's so crazy. And the funny thing is, like, El Chapo's wife probably wasn't even seeing the drugs. Like, they probably don't even see the drugs because they're not moving the drugs. They're in charge of the people who are.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the money, yes, because we know all the wives are hiding money under, the beds or the houses or whatever. That's different. But even the top cartel members are not sitting there and looking at the stacks and stacks. No, it's like logistics. It's being moved around.
When I was in Colombia, we went to we were in Medellin, and then from Medellin we went to a spot called Guatatupe, and that's where it's like this big ass like rock thing that you can hike out there.
Right.
Me and my boys went. So after we hiked the rock, right, I wanted to get on the boat. And so our host, he set up like, a boat trip for us. And we was out on the boat drinking, partying, turned up. And so as we're on the boat, you're on the water, right? And it's like all these like peninsulas and islands. And the host is giving us like a guided tour of like all the houses on the islands, right? And he's like, oh, this was Pablo Escobar's like main security guard.
Right.
He lived here. This is his name. And like told us about him. And then and so basically like the main people of his operations, they kind of all had houses out there. But interestingly enough, none of them were stash houses. Like all the work and drugs and money that was being moved was not where they were all living.
You never see it.
Right. So we actually went to Pablo's mansion where he actually lived, like across the water, his mom's
And it was hard
house.
to get there, right?
Yeah, it wasn't easy.
That's what I'm
Like it was
saying.
like an hour boat ride deep.
Right.
Like deep.
Like you had to
back
hire
there.
transportation to get there.
Yeah, it was deep back there.
Right.
Like, you
That's
couldn't
another
just
thing
pull up
people
to his house.
don't realize. Like, you're not going to, let me tell you, the only time I saw stacks of money and stacks of cocaine was when it was confiscated and we had it in rooms in federal buildings. That was the only time I ever saw that. But there's submarines. Like, I don't think people realize the process of making cocaine. It's a huge process. It comes from coca leaves.
Yeah, in the remote jungle.
Right. It happens in the jungles. It's not something that's like manufactured like, like crystal meth. It's not a test tube drug. Like, guys, there's little workers in the jungle, like working with no shoes and no clothes sometimes so they don't take shit. Like, but again, it goes back to what people are watching and people think that they know.
I agree.
So okay, let's go back to the snitch part.
Okay.
I didn't snitch to get him in trouble. I snitched to get me out of trouble. There's a difference. If I did not say anything, let's say I decided to divorce him and I didn't say anything. If my phones would have been tapped, guess who's going to federal prison? Why would I go to federal prison for something I didn't do? I would have gotten charged with conspiracy. I would have gotten charged for not telling them or really not reporting it. That's like 25 years, probably more in federal prison. I would have been in federal prison. So now I'm going to not snitch, get indicted for something I never did. I was never involved. And now my children are with this cartel member? That makes no sense. So first of all, I didn't take the kids away from him. I physically removed myself from the house. He still has some custody of the children. He sees his children. So for those saying she left, no, the kids still have a relationship with their father. I obviously have more custody and obviously everything is monitored and supervised. But people like to assume, assumption is the lowest form of knowledge.
Yeah.
Like, oh my gosh, she left and took the kids. Listen, he's still living in Houston.
Well, let's be real. Like, to me as an outsider, it's not really snitching because he never got incarcerated for it.
He never got incarcerated. He never got in trouble.
It's like you informed your employer because you took an oath and you had an obligation and a duty to the law and the badge that you serve to inform them. At that point, the agency has an obligation to do an investigation to figure this out. And like you said in episode 1, is that they were more concerned about you than they were about him.
Yeah, they didn't care about him. Because he was not working for the feds. He did not have a top secret clearance like I did. Mm-hmm. He was not doing any interrogations. He was not doing that. I was. Because
TikTok is like, well, you snitch, but he never got locked up for it. He was never charged for it or anything like that. But then their next question is, well, how come he wasn't? Why, if you did inform them about cartel activity, why did your employer not pursue criminal charges?
Because I was reporting off of a conversation. There is no evidence other than a conversation. So that's hearsay. Now, if I would have called and said, oh my God, there's millions of dollars here, there's kilos of cocaine, that's now evidence. There was no evidence. Like, what people don't understand is you cannot convict anybody without any evidence. There has to be substantial evidence.
How long does it take to build that case of evidence?
It takes over 10 years. The Flores twins were wires for 10 years before Chapo got indicted. Like, these investigations take years and years and years. I've been interrogating for 18 years. I remember interrogating the same type of people for years and years and years and years before anybody got indicted. But people don't understand that. These are like long-term investigations because you're trying to get the biggest guy caught instead of like the little mules. You'll interrogate the mules to get more information on the actual operations. But in order to take everything down, you need to have substantial evidence in the logistics of it. It's the same thing with human trafficking. Oh, you got to save the children. We're trying to build a case to save as many children as we can. And I think people are just they let their emotions get the best of them. And they're like, oh my God, why would the government investigate my ex? Think about it. A crime has to occur for it to even be investigated. Just because he says he was involved or is involved doesn't, what evidence is it? Well, he said.
Right.
Well, he said she killed him. Okay, she said he killed him, but now there's got to be evidence. Where's the weapon? Where are the fingerprints? Where's the DNA? Where's the body? There's got to be substantial evidence. And I think people don't realize that.
Yeah.
Why would the government start a full-blown investigation on some words?
And probably more of their concern, correct me if I'm wrong, is your potential involvement with it, not necessarily his involvement with the cartel.
Right. Because I had access to top secret files and top secret information that gets gathered from other investigations, including Cartel. Does that make sense?
It does.
Now, he really wasn't, like, I'm the interrogator. What is it that he would even get from me? Because a lot of people say, oh, they were working in together. What is it that, now, unless I was an internal spy, then I could give him information. Hey, we just interrogated so-and-so. We just interrogated so-and-so. But I'm an interrogator. All I'm doing is asking questions and writing reports.
Did you guys even talk about your work like that? Was that part of your relationship? Like you come home, from work or,
How's work? Good, great.
And he's not asking about the details of your day, your cases.
No, because he works in the financial world. He works in the financial embezzlement, money laundering world. I was an interrogator. So I never even interrogated those white collar crimes. I was interrogating the mules. I was interrogating the lower level. I was interrogating parts of the logistics, the actual movement of drugs.
Mm-hmm.
He was higher on the totem pole when it came to the business aspect of the cartel. But people don't understand that. It's like so hard for people to understand. And really, it's like we're like on episode 4 that we've been explaining it and they still don't get it.
It's a buzz. Like, yo, you got the internet on fire with this right now. And the comments are always, all over the spectrum of curiosity, of speculation, of assumption, right? And I think it's really hard for people to understand situations that are not their own or they don't have any experience with. And so they automatically jump to a conclusion and make a judgment of that it's false because they can't conceptualize it or they have no experience with it. So it cannot be true.
Of course. Yeah. And that's a great point. They have no experience. They have all the conception or perception that they do have is what they see on TV.
Yeah.
Yeah.
How many people actually met or talked to somebody knowingly in the cartel?
It's interesting because I do have a lot of people that consult with me, a lot of women that are actually in the same situation I was that call me to get advice on how to get themselves out of it.
Out of a situation.
I just had somebody who is being charged and she called me and said, hey, my boyfriend, who is also a cop, got caught because he was being part of the cartel. And they came to the house and everything. And she's like, I had no idea.
Yeah.
And he was a cop and she was a cop. So I sat there, I listened to what she had to say. I gave her my advice and I gave her what I could, right? But she said, I didn't know.
Yeah.
And he was actually moving drugs. That guy was moving drugs.
I met a guy at a friend's birthday party who said that he unknowingly married a woman who was a mule for a Mexican cartel. And he didn't know it. And then he ended up finding out about it. But then instead of saying something right away, he ended up like getting a mistress and had this whole story. I was like, bro, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah, we got to get these people on our podcast.
Yeah.
They have to share our stories because people need to understand, like, as abstract and wild as a story is, it's not altogether uncommon in some situations. Like, we just don't run across people like
okay, so let's talk about Ozark, okay? So the guy from Ozark was the accountant.
Marty?
Yeah, he was the accountant. Now, remember, he was living in the city before they moved out the country.
Yeah.
He wasn't moving drugs when they were in the city.
No.
Now, he decided to start moving drugs and money whenever they went out to the countryside.
I don't think Marty was moving drugs, though. He was always laundering.
Or
he was always opening and buying businesses and
money,
washing the money. So he would have boatloads of cash.
Right. So what was crazy about Ozark is, do you remember when the attorney would show up?
Yeah, the lady. I forget her name.
Yeah. So the attorney would show up. She was the attorney for the cartel.
Yep.
Right. And so she was not moving money and or drugs.
No.
Her specific job was that she was counsel for the cartel.
Yeah.
So now he was money laundering, right? Mm-hmm. But you can money launder without having lots of cash moving around. There's people that will do that for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like Marty didn't really have to be moving the actual money himself.
You know, speaking of money laundering, I swear to God on everything. Have you ever seen those businesses that sell lights, like chandeliers and light fixtures and shit? I swear to you, those are money laundering businesses. I have never
a lot
seen
of businesses are
a
money
person
laundering businesses.
in like a lighting store shopping for a chandelier. The lights are always on. Like the utility bill got to be OD.
Yeah, but
And I'm
also
just like, who
a lot
goes
of, so when I
there?
was doing undercover work, I was doing white collar crime. For those that don't know, white collar crime is cartel. Like, did you guys not know? Like, white collar crime is any crime that's over $25,000. Cartel is over $25,000. So one of the undercover investigations that I did is I actually went into a salon and the lady was doing my hair and I had the camera inside my bag and I put the camera on there. Now, back in the day, we were old school. So there was a hole cut out in the bag. I talk about this in another podcast, and the camera was facing the back because in the back, they were bringing those big bottles. Now, those big bottles were full of cocaine. Like those big shampoo bottles.
Yeah.
They were transporting the bottles in and out. Because, you know, in the back of a salon, you have all those giant bottles.
Right.
But it was actually cocaine. So the camera was catching the people when they were doing the drop-offs and pickups of the bottles of shampoo. Now, that was actual cocaine movement.
Yeah.
But there wasn't money coming in, like actual stacks of money coming in and out. Does that make sense?
That is.
So that salon, they were involved in the movement of the actual drugs and they were hiding it because they were a salon. So they were hiding it in the bottles.
Yeah.
So it's like, we're a salon, but we're running some shit in the bag.
And that's how it works. It's always these like random businesses. I swear, lighting stores, it has to be money laundering. I have never seen one single soul in one of those stores. I've never seen a car out front. The lights are always on. Nobody's in there. I'm like, it's got to be money laundering.
And it's like you have businesses and businesses have revenue and cash flow. And so that's how you end up washing. Right.
Look, back to Medellin, right? When I was out there with the boys on the trip, we went to a strip club all the way turned up.
Yeah, of course.
Oh my gosh. Amazing strip club. 10 out of 10 recommend. Anyways, we go there. I have a conversation.
What's the name? Go ahead.
I'm not going to say it. I'm not going to say it. No, this is my plug. This is my connect. I'm not going to tell you. I'm not going to rat on the connect.
Okay.
Come on, man. Come on. I'm not a snitch. I'm not a snitch like some people. But anyways, I'm out there, right? I have a conversation with a guy there. Come to find out, he's in a cartel. He tells me, right? And so he starts asking me questions about where I live, what I do for work, my skill set. It was like an interview on the spot in a strip club. I'm just trying to get some ass bounced on my lap.
Yeah.
He's asking me 101 questions about my work. So then he's like, if I sent you a package, could you get it for me? I'm like, what? A package of what? And he was just like, a package. And I was like, oh, a package. Now, mind you, I come from the suburbs. I come from a predominantly white community. I didn't know about marijuana until I was like 17.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of slow to understand these things. So he gets into it and he was like, do you know how much a kilo of coke goes for out here? I'm like, no. He's like, $3,000. He's like, you know how much you could sell it for in Houston?
Like 10.
I was like, no. He's like 30, 35. I started doing the math. I'm like, man, that's a lot. That's a $30,000 margin per brick.
Yeah.
Maybe I can do this.
Yeah.
Maybe I have it in me to do it for 1 year, retire from the drug game after a year, get my millions, and go do something legit. So he was like, do you think I could send you a package? And I was like, you know what? I'm actually not cut out for that type of work, but my boy over there is. He sells weed all the time. He'll do it for you. I was like, I'll be the guy to wash it for you. I was like, let's get some houses. I'll clean it up for you. He was like laughing and shit. He's like, no, you're mad cool. And he told me we had like a pass. Like we were connected with the group that he was with, the cartel he was with. And fast forward the story, we go downtown Medellin. Our taxi driver did not want to take us downtown Medellin. They're like, it's unsafe. We couldn't get a ride down there for nothing. They're like, the gangs is too bad. But we were like, we want to go. And we find one taxi driver who drops us off on the outskirts of downtown Medellin because he was afraid. We walk in there And yo, the hood pass worked and they showed us mad love. We had a great dinner. We had great food. Like they guided us around. It was nothing but like good vibes.
Yeah.
Love Medellin. Love
But
the
it's
people
crazy.
out there.
Like
But
you don't see drugs or money in
Nah.
Colombia, and that's where it's actually
it wasn't even no aggression. It wasn't like somebody came up
Right.
with us with a gun or knife
know,
or a
again,
group of people
perception.
mobbing us. We were
Right.
wearing our jewelry, our necklaces. You know, we
Right.
Americans were black. We could look
It's
got
like
a little
when
flash
people
to us.
hear like, "Oh, you're going to Chicago, don't get shot." I'm like, you
It
don't get
was-
shot because you're going to
It
Chicago.
was nothing crazy.
Right.
And so I say all that to say, like, shout out to the cartel, shout out to the Connect, shout out to the plug.
You're hilarious.
No, I love this story. People are always fascinated. I think this is a great time for you to plug your book. Tell people about your book and where they could find it.
Okay, so Through These Brown Eyes, you can get it on Amazon and Audible. So yeah, book 2's coming out. Power of Forgiveness is in the
Yes.
works.
Through These Brown Eyes is a great read. It's an autobiography of Angelica's life story, and not just about her work, working for the feds, or about the secret that her ex-husband revealed, but also her childhood experiences and what led her to get into that type of work as well.
Right.
Thank you for my autographed copy.
Of course.
I love it.
And then just to throw it out there, I mean, why would he even tell me about it? Like, let's talk about that. How come nobody's asking that?
I wouldn't tell my chick.
Right. Like, you kept it from me for 10 years.
It's not in her best interest to know.
Why'd you tell me, you know?
I mean, unless I knew she was like down for certain shit, like it's not in her best interest to know. You can still love a person and lie to them, right?
Well, I don't know. If your wife lied for you for 10 years, would you stay with her?
No, that's different. That's different.
what I mean?
If I lied to her, I
That's
could
what I'm
still
saying.
love her,
I
but
think
she
a lot
lied
of
to
people
me.
don't realize that if you forgive somebody who lied to you for 10 years,
But
10 out of 10, they're going to continue to lie to you because there was no repercussion. There was no consequence. Like, oh, I lied to her about this. I can keep lying to her about all types of shit, which he did. There was other types of stuff that he was lying, which we didn't get into that because I didn't want to destroy his, you know.
No, we're not here to slide them through
Right.
the mud. No.
But, yeah.
Maybe you can't love somebody and lie to them. Would you get back with them?
Hell no. Not even if they paid me. Not even if they paid me.
And that's this episode of Untying Knots.
Yeah.
That's hilarious. No, I love it. Thank you for always being transparent and authentic to share your story. And really, I mean, I feel like the goal of us sharing these things with people is so they could resonate with our experiences and reflect on their own, and then see that we've gone through hard shit and that they could emerge from it a better person and totally change their life for the better, even though somebody fucked them over.
For sure.
For
Yeah.
sure. Appreciate you. Thank you for everything. Be sure to check us out on YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. Follow and subscribe, and we'll see you on the next episode of Untying Knots.